I remember there was a lot of hype for this one leading up to it, so I'm thankful it wasn't a monstrosity. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel and a brand new review series. With the upcoming release of Godzilla vs. Kong, I'm first going to talk about the other three movies in what's now known as the MonsterVerse, which are Godzilla, Kong Skull Island, and Godzilla King of the Monsters, since I don't have reviews for any of these other movies. And then, once I review Godzilla vs. Kong, I'll do a ranking of all four MonsterVerse movies. So, first, we're talking about 2014's Godzilla. Let me know before we begin what your thoughts on Godzilla were in the comments below, as well as make sure to hit that thumbs up button as it helps me out immensely by getting my channel out there. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with reviews of new releases, classic films, hidden gems, and so much more on a near daily basis. But now let's talk about 2014's Godzilla. This stars Aaron Taylor Johnson as Ford Brody, a Navy bomb expert who has just reunited with his family in San Francisco when he is forced to go to Japan to help his estranged father Joe, played by Bryan Cranston. Soon, both men are swept up in an escalating crisis when Godzilla, King of the Monsters, arises from the sea to combat malevolent adversaries that threaten the survival of humanity. The creatures leave colossal destruction in their wake as they make their way towards the final battleground, San Francisco. Before we begin, as with my reviews of other older films, I will be discussing spoilers for this, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, this is your spoiler warning. If you wish to know nothing, go watch the movie first and then come back to this. But anyway, here we go. This is written by Max Borenstein and directed by Gareth Edwards, who also directed the underrated Monsters from 2010 and went on to direct Rogue One in the Star Wars universe. And it's the first American-made Godzilla movie since the 1998 film, which was critically reviled and was also a box office disappointment.
That's a lot of fish.
This is considered a more back-to-basics film for Godzilla, with Edwards citing the original 1954 version as a huge influence, wanting to bring back the spirit of the original run. It's worth noting that the Godzilla character was initially conceived as an allegory for nuclear weapons, with the original films offering social commentary with an anti-war stance. Edwards wanted to recapture that here, especially with its focus more on human characters, though more on them in a bit. Edwards also stated he was influenced by Steven Spielberg here, most notably films like Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He wanted the film to be able to showcase its more humane side while also functioning as a grand, epic suspense thriller in the vein of Spielberg's classic blockbusters. And that he was certainly able to accomplish, cutting back and forth between claustrophobic scenes of scientists and military generals cooped up in smaller spaces trying to figure out how to combat Godzilla, as well as these grand sweeping shots of these cities thrown into chaos as Godzilla and these creatures known as mutos, or massive unidentified terrestrial organisms, lurk nearby. What really sold it for me was Alexandre Desplat's score. From the opening scene, he sets the tone for this with his booming feel that's enough to make anyone immediately tense up. He does a great job of making it feel very strong and giving you a clear signal that something bad's about to happen with a nice hook to the music, but without it ever coming across as cheesy or silly. He always knew how to match the tone of the situation, from the more grounded, character-driven moments to whenever we saw Godzilla in action. And going with that Spielberg influence, it felt like something that was thematically in the same realm as, say, Jaws or Jurassic Park. The main criticism this movie often gets is the lack of Godzilla himself, who would often be seen for the first part of the movie only in brief shots and never in his entirety until later on. Like, you'd see his tail go by for a second, or a brief shot of his face, and his presence only amounts to a very small amount of screen time that was placed at brief points throughout the movie, kind of in the same vein as Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. And I get the disappointment in that, as one of the main reasons you go to see these movies is to see Godzilla in action. I got why it was done, which was, as I said earlier, to give the film a more humane side, which is important since you want to have strong characters in a movie, though I think had the characters themselves been stronger, it wouldn't be as noticeable, as we'd be more engaged in what's going on when Godzilla's not around. But here, not only do you barely get to see Godzilla, but what we're focused on when he's not around isn't all that strong at times. And I'll get more into the characters in a moment, but what I will say is, I did at least like how they built up to Godzilla, even if we could have gotten more of him. Because once we actually got Godzilla in action, it became awesome to see, and the film didn't hold back. His fights against the Mutos, who themselves only have 11 minutes of screen time, were incredible, and were shot magnificently by Edwards. The moment towards the end where Godzilla holds the Muto's mouth open and blasts his atomic breath into it was hands down my favorite moment. And while I am a bit disappointed that we didn't get to see more of this, what I did appreciate was how well Edwards established the tone here, giving us a grounded movie that also felt incredibly high stakes. At the very least, even during scenes when we didn't see Godzilla or the Mutos, the presence was still felt whenever we saw scenes of the cities just thrown into chaos. There was still a great sense of suspense established that Edwards was able to build up. As for the human characters, while I do appreciate Edwards' attempt at injecting humanity into this creature feature, it doesn't quite land as strongly as it should have, and the main reason is due to who it chooses to focus on. I think the one thing that frustrated me more than the lack of Godzilla is the lack of Bryan Cranston, and it's not even just because of how much I enjoy him personally as an actor. But what happens is, we spend roughly the first half hour mostly focused on his character, which to me was the strongest part of the movie. The first big emotional moment comes within the first few scenes where we see him lose his wife as this nuclear power plant that he works at collapses. And it's just handled so well thanks to Cranston's excellent performance. And as we spend time with him in the first act and we see the obsession that drives him, you really get attached to him right away. Because it's an obsession that's not in this cartoonish one-note manner. It kind of gets to the initial stance taken when Godzilla was first created, which is showing the more humane effects of getting involved with nuclear weaponry. So it hits very well. But then they kill Cranston off by the half-hour mark, and we still have an hour and a half left to go here. Now, I know this isn't the first time in a film where we spend a considerable amount of time with a character only for the movie to do a 180 and kill them off early or at the halfway mark, but what makes this instance particularly frustrating is who they replace Cranston with. While Aaron Taylor Johnson's a good actor, his character Ford is simply not built up to be as interesting of a guy. He has an estranged relationship with his dad, and he's mostly moved on from what happened in the film's opening scene. The only really compelling thing about him is that he's married with kids, and he's just trying to get back to them. He's unfortunately just not as engaging of a character. And while the scenes of him trying to get back to his family are good for what they are, they just don't pack that same punch. If anything, I thought Elizabeth Olsen, who plays his wife, had more compelling scenes, though it's unfortunate that her role is a lot more thankless as it's just her worrying about her husband during sporadic cutaway moments, and that's mainly just due to how great of an actress Elizabeth Olsen is. Then you also have the two scientists, played by Ken Watanabe and Sally Hawkins, who are part of the project known as Project Monarch, which is to study Godzilla, along with David Strathairn as a Navy admiral who's in charge of trying to take down the Mutos. And as I said earlier, the film will cut between the scenes of Johnson trying to escape the city, with scenes of Watanabe, Hawkins, and Strathairn trying to figure out the next strategy of getting rid of these monsters. And again, these scenes are fine. I thought the performances by all three actors were pretty good, but outside of Watanabe to an extent, these aren't the most compelling characters either. They're mainly there to provide a lot of exposition and tell us what's happened in the past with these creatures, and it's fine, but it's also the fact that it's just these scenes of characters explaining things to us, on top of the fact that we're getting a limited amount of Godzilla in his own movie. All that, plus the focus on the truthfully uninteresting character played by Johnson, wears you down a bit after a while. I also think considering Ford's another Navy officer and there's this heavy focus on more militaristic characters with a lot of his interactions being with other Navy personnel, it kind of goes against the initial intent of the Godzilla movies being anti-war, especially anti-nuclear war, with these characters being the protagonists. It's not that the film explicitly takes on a pro-war message, but it felt more like a very neutral stance. It initially looked like they were going to have something to say on that subject, especially with the Cranston material earlier on, but it winds up not really offering a specific message, or at most, it'll be a little vague about it based on some of the dialogue in Watanabe scenes. And while I still think it's a good movie overall, considering Edwards said he wanted to capture the spirit of the original Godzilla movie, it would have been nice had that message been more out in the open. So 2014's Godzilla is overall a good movie, if not the epic masterpiece that it could have been. It's definitely enjoyable due to Edwards' direction, its great sense of suspense, its thrilling action scenes, as well as Alexandre Desplat's score. I would say that the film could have used both more Godzilla as well as more Bryan Cranston, as killing his character off early on was a big mistake. And while the rest of the cast is good, there's just not as much emotional depth to them, and the character-based moments aren't as strong as they were in the first 30 minutes. Though to be clear, I still think it's a good time. It looks great, and when it hits its high marks, it's very entertaining. Godzilla gets a 7.5 out of 10.
Pretty good.
Yes, it is. It is
Pretty. pretty good.
So stay tuned. Up next, I'll have a review out for Kong Skull Island, and in the meantime, let me know, did you see Godzilla, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did this live up to the hype for you? Do you have a favorite Godzilla movie in general? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone, and keep having fun with film.